New England Bound, Slavery and Colonization in Early America is a scholarly work published in 2016 and authored by Wendy Warren, who serves as an assistant professor of history at Princeton University. The core purpose of the book is to challenge the prevailing notion that American chattel slavery was exclusively relegated to the antebellum South. Warren argues that this perception is flawed, contending that the New England colonists not only practiced slavery but also had an economic reliance on the English slave plantations situated in the Caribbean. By adopting this fresh perspective, Warren aims to present a more accurate portrayal of life in the early American colonies. The book received notable recognition, being named a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize and the recipient of the 2017 Merle Cordy Social History Prize from the Organization of American Historians. In New England Bound, Warren asserts that slavery was an integral aspect of daily existence in the early English colonies of North America right from their inception. She highlights that the tragedy of chattel slavery, characterized by inheritable, permanent, and commodified bondage, which prominently features in narratives of other early English colonization efforts in North America and the Caribbean, is largely absent from the story of early New England. However, Warren contends that this absence does not mean that slavery was absent, but rather that it was underexplored. Warren's central argument revolves around the concept that the establishment of John Winthrop's city on a hill was underpinned by an economic system that interconnected New England with the sugar plantations in the West Indies and the broader transatlantic slave trade. Prominent families in New England, including the Winthrops, Pynchons, and Hutchisons, initially amassed wealth by exporting agricultural products from New England to the sugar colonies in the West Indies. Many of these same families also invested in the sugar colonies, effectively becoming slaveholders through indirect means. Since New England itself did not cultivate a significant cash crop, its economic prosperity was intimately tied to the profits generated by sugar production and the associated practice of slavery. Warren estimates that up to 40% of New England's economy had direct links to the sugar plantations of the Caribbean. In summary, New England Bound challenges the traditional understanding of early American history, shedding light on the interconnectedness between New England, the Caribbean, and the institution of slavery. Wendy Warren effectively challenges the notion that the rigid theology of Puritanism stood in opposition to chattel slavery. In her detailed analysis, she reveals that the New England Puritans embraced a hierarchical view of creation, positioning Africans and Native Americans as the perpetually enslaved at the lowest rung. The proceeds from trade with the Caribbean were instrumental in financing expansionist wars that dispossessed Native Americans, some of whom were subsequently enslaved both within New England and the Caribbean. The book commences its exploration of slavery in New England by highlighting the story of Tisquantum, also known as Squanto, a Patuxet Native American who played a role in mediating peace among early colonists and other tribes. Tisquantum's ability to speak English was due to his prior abduction and sale into slavery by an earlier English explorer. Among the imports from the sugar colonies were African slaves, and Warren effectively demonstrates the presence of enslaved Africans in the colony's earliest days, contributing to the labor-intensive tasks of clearing and settlement. Warren refers to these individuals as coerced colonists. While the enslaved African population never exceeded 10% of New England's overall population, it was common practice for affluent residents to own one or more slaves. Enslaved Africans were also brought in to replace enslaved Native Americans, who either succumbed to diseases or resisted labor. For those Native American slaves who refused to work, a grim fate awaited them. They were sold into Caribbean slavery, an equivalent of a death sentence due to the harsh conditions on sugar plantations. Importantly, Warren underscores that the codification of chattel slavery into law was initiated by the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1641. The Connecticut Code of Laws, also established in 1641, further legitimized the enslavement of both Africans and Native Americans as a form of punishment for certain offenses. In her search for indications of New Englanders' opposition to slavery, Warren's findings reveal little more than a subtle recoiling from the inherent cruelty of the institution. She astutely observes that this response wasn't unique to New England but mirrored attitudes prevalent throughout the Americas. Through her comprehensive understanding of early New England, Warren revisits well-known historical narratives and imbues them with fresh context. Among her discoveries is the account of an enslaved African man who testified during the Salem witch trials, recounting strange occurrences involving his possibly bewitched horses. Warren underscores that the presence of this enslaved individual shifts the lens on Salem, depicting it not merely as a superstitious Puritan enclave, but as a diverse port city connected to Africa and the Caribbean, inhabited by people from around the globe. Through meticulous examination of fragmented historical records, Warren reconstructs the experiences of enslaved Africans and Native Americans in early New England. She highlights that while the prevalence of slavery was relatively low in this region, this offered little solace to those who were enslaved. Instead, enslaved individuals often faced profound isolation in addition to the myriad cruelties and hardships intrinsic to slavery. Moreover, as early colonists, these enslaved individuals shared in the adversities endured by their owners, including periods of starvation, all without the prospect of sharing in the eventual rewards of colonization. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.